Yo, yo, yo. It is another Tuesday, so another episode of Boyd What Is Up. I am your host, James Boyd. What's up? We got Seprock Beats in the background. Hold on 1 second. So things are a little different in the Boyd world right now. Let's go ahead and see here. Alright, so we got a little bit different setup. Hopefully everything's, hopefully everything's working out okay. I feel like I've got a really glitchy feed. I've been having some bandwidth problems, not trying to get all nerdy about it, but I mean, that's not even that nerdy. Basically, internet's going up and down, so it's like, you know, dropping like it's hot. Oh man, it looks way glitchy on the feed. All right, so looks like Superfan Chris is here. What is up? We got two people on with us on YouTube, and let's see. So I've got a new setup. I'm in this transitional phase, trying to figure out, I don't know, how to run the show. So I've got a new, I don't know, I don't really like it better, but the computer I'm running is better. Things are just better on the computer, but YouTube's been really glitchy. But I need you guys to give me feedback on how things are going. Apparently live chat's working, which is very good. Can you hear me, Superfan Chris? Let me see here. Our audio. So I don't know. If you guys can hear me, let me know. I'm gonna go ahead and dump. Let's go ahead and get some folks on from Facebook. Why not? Let's see. Oh no, what's going on? Yeah. So hopefully the YouTube feed stays successful, but I don't know. Or at least my audio stays okay. Let me know what's going on. All right, so hey, what is up? We've got let's see, it's Mr. Haas. Yes, the Jug Band fella. I can't remember all the rest of the name. It's a pretty long name. All right, so let me know, please, by all means, or not by all means, please, and thank you in advance for helping me out. Like I said, I'm using a new setups. Things have been super hectic today, and I've just been sort of just trying to get this done, and I think it worked. But all right, so crazy world, what's even happening? I know everyone's making videos about, I don't know, the pandemic and all sorts of stuff like that. I know we are going through quite a bit right now. What do you guys think? What's on your mind? I mean, I think there are some things to talk about for sure, like the economy. I think I said somewhere in the description we're going to talk about the economy, possibly spirituality. I don't know. Whatever. What do you guys want to talk about? I think that we are in a period of reckoning. You see, I think as the great philosopher Mos Def has taught us, hold on, I don't want to mess up this. I don't want to mess up the quote, so I'm gonna look up the exact quote so I don't mess it up, because I want to say it word for word. Okay, here we go. So, yes. Okay, here we go. Oh, I forgot about this. I need to be, this new setup I'm using, I don't know how to necessarily share my screen yet. All right, I'll learn that later. It's not that important. Okay, so by the great teacher, philosopher Mos Def, he has taught us some things. And one phrase he has taught us from the works of his known as mathematics in the book of, I think it is it mathematics? It might be the album name too. I don't remember. No, Black on Both Sides, I think, is the album. Where is it? I think it's on Black on Both. Yes, Black on Both Sides. Thank you. Yes, indeed. Um, what was I saying? Oh, yes. So, as he has taught us, why did one straw break the camel's back? Here's a secret: the million other straws underneath it. It's all mathematics, right? So here we are in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, and this, a lot of folks are considering sort of like as this, like, I don't know, major event that is in of itself a catastrophic breaking event, and oh no, people are having to experience buffering. Hey, I apologize in advance if you're having to experience buffering. We'll just work within those bounds the best we can. But yeah, this pandemic isn't in of itself like a hurricane that washed away the shore. That's how people are talking about it. And no, it's really not. It's a accrual over time. It's an aggregate of factors. It's a million straws with a big straw on top. That's all it is. And so, I think it's interesting to see all the different narratives that are floating around. It's definitely eye-opening. I mean, because it is a time of reckoning. I'm not saying that as in some kind of like religious fashion or something weird like that. I'm saying it's a time of reckoning because we have to figure out what philosophy governs the world of humans. Yeah, humans in general. Because we have to, like, we're living in this house, and it's finite. It's only got so much space, and so now we have to really think about it. We got so many people crowding into the house, and it's not even so much about the people crowding. It's about who's doing what. It's like you got a bunch of people that have to share like a frat house or something. But like instead of sharing it very equally, you've got the bottom layer that's dedicated to like the richest frat members, and they have their cars running all the time downstairs just because it's like fun to have the car running, and they don't really have any thought about it. Or you could say maybe I don't know, they cook on a barbecue grill inside the house, but they live at the bottom level, so it doesn't matter to them, right? And they let it go up to where all the rest of the people are crammed, and they are having to deal with the fallout of this. I mean, it's sort of a stretch metaphor, but it's sort of like that in a way. So anyway, so you're gonna hear a lot of stuff like sort of eugenic-esque talk, and you probably already have. Like you've heard of people probably, especially right-wing folks, talk about what's it called? Talk about this as a cleansing time. Like the weak will be culled from the flock, and then this is like a thing. Like that's like normal. And to some people that is normal, right? That's sort of like this cultural, that's again, that comes back to the cultural reckoning that we have, the spiritual reckoning that we're going to have. Like what is it that we think that how the world's supposed to be? That's going to be a fundamental question coming up. Let's see here. All right, let's see if there's any no one new stuff in the chat. Yes, nice indeed. Let's see. All right, so what is up? So what do you guys think? There's a lot going on economically. There's a lot of fallout happening. We're in the midst of a massive government power grab, but also on top of that, we're in the midst of a massive corporate takeover and a suckling of the corporate of the corporate piglet at the teat of the government, right? The taxpayer teat. We have this now. So this opportunity for them to, like, for instance, $50 billion. We throw these numbers around like they don't mean anything. $50 billion going to the airline industry. I mean, I wonder how much does it cost to start an airline? Like, instead of bailing them out for 50 billion, can they just like either buy them for 50 billion or just start another like government owned airline company? Why should we invest in them if they, I mean, they're if they're gonna go out of business, you know what I mean? Um, Unless the government's gonna invest in everybody that's going out of business, you know what I mean? And you could say, oh well, you know, it's hard to start an airline and whatever. I mean, I don't know. We've got a lot of, I mean, we have a lot of government airplanes that are operating. So, I mean, if the government bought those airplanes and then operated them, that would work. Now, if some private entity wants to go ahead and either go ahead and start their own private stuff to compete against the government, that's fine too. But if we're going to front the cash, then we should, you know, have our name on the dash. You know, we should be owners. You know what I mean? The taxpayers. If we're fronting that cash, even if it's a loan, unless you're going to offer that same loan to all businesses and all folks that are having a hard time right now trying to make it. You know what I mean? So they're picking and choosing. This is happening in front of us right now. Corporate grift. It's unfortunate that that's the case, but that's what's happening. So what do you guys think? All right, Mary Tierney on Facebook. What is up? Thank you for tuning in. Chanel, hey, what is happening? Why do that when your buddies are lobbying? Yes, indeed. Yes, we're living in a kleptocracy. You know, we're basically where we have kleptocrats out there stealing from us. It is the rule by the thieves, basically. You could also look at it as a kakistocracy. That's a really odd word that hasn't been used very often. Kakistocracy, that is ruled by the absolute worst possible. So there you go. I think we're entering that. If you had any doubts before, I think now we're getting closer to a point where we can agree that we are being governed by pretty much the worst possible people that could govern us. In fact, let me drop something. I'm going to drop something in the comments for you guys to check out. I should have put this in the description, but I forgot. I was going to go over it. Let me see. All right, so one thing I want to show you guys is, or at least tell you guys about, is I Am Fishhead. I Am Fishhead is a very cool documentary. Let's see, bam. Very cool documentary, topdocumentaryfilms.com. A lot of, they cite their research on stuff, so I'm not going to go list a bunch of citations and whatnot. They list their, anyway, you could watch the video. I think it's like, I don't even remember. Hold on. How long is this thing? It's like 78 minutes. It's not even that long. Really interesting. A lot of, it's basically the psychology of leadership, and it turns out that, and the reason why it's called that is because the old saying is that the fish rots from the head, or always rots from the head first. And so this is, yeah, I Am Fishhead. Oh no, hold on. Hopefully I didn't lose my YouTube stream. Looks like it's cutting in and out. This really sucks. Okay, I lost my train of thought because I was having technical difficulties. All right, let's see. Wait a minute, I'm getting so. Hey, by the way, Facebook folks, if you're watching on Facebook, thank you and much love. But I would prompt you to go ahead and jump onto the YouTube feed, because number one, your chat entries are much more stable, so I can see them in like real time better than I can through Facebook, and that way you can also subscribe. And sometimes I can't really simulcast the same way every time through Facebook. So Prana Self says, "What's up, Prana? By the way, and thank you for tuning in." If you're still on, I can't even tell. I don't know how to use this new Facebook Live Studio thing. It's weird. Are people viewing? I don't even know who's even watching. I don't know. There's some people. Prana Self was on for a moment. The youth of the future to every nation. That's true. However, unfortunately, the previous generations of the youth have forsaken them. At least in my opinion. Tell me why I'm wrong. But I'm pretty sure many people can agree with why I'm right. Freddie, what is up, my friend? Thank you for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe and like me on YouTube so you can be notified of when we've got special stuff going on and live show. But every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, we got the Boyd normal broadcast. I do need to start doing it more often. Okay, so yes, what was the point of that? Top documentary films. Man, it's really scary. Am I going offline? Hey, YouTube folks, are you seeing me going in and off line? Let me know in the comments, please, because I'm getting some very alarming looking numbers from my video watching thing. I just want to make sure that this thing actually works, and I'm sorry about all of the housekeeping. It's just, like I said, it's like trying to, you would think you get a new computer that works better, it's gonna improve everything instantly, and it's like for some reason things aren't running right. Okay, so I'm looking around so I can maybe move my computer so that it gets a better signal or something. Let me find something to put it on. I don't even know if that will work. Let me just play around with it for a second. It might not even be that. Alright, well, hopefully YouTube folks and everybody else. So it sounds like I'm loud, live, clear, in and out, I don't know. Whatever. Okay. I am Fishhead. Yes, prevalence of psychopathy in, whoops, that's the wrong. Hold on. Okay, yeah, I mean, that's fine for YouTube. Sorry, my Facebook people have it. I'm trying to. One of these days, I'm going to have a live, what do you call it? Like a studio editor or something. And I mean, whether you guys like it or not, I think I'm going to end up moving out of the shop studios, if that's the case. Because it's a pain in the ass to broadcast. I mean, I thought it would be fun and cool to broadcast from the shop, but it actually sucks. Because there's really not a lot of room. So if you've been to the shop studios, you will know what I'm talking about. Alright, sorry about the crazy stuff going on. Alright, so tell me what you think. You guys are telling me it's working okay. I don't know, man. The thing that it's the what's it called? The studio monitor is freaking me out, so I'm just gonna try not to look at that. But that's also where I can see your chat inputs. So, man, there's nothing I can do. I just can't run away from these issues with technology. I wonder. It's like I'm getting older, right? And I've been using computers since I can remember. And my dad was an early adopter of computer technology, and so, but it's almost like, I've turned 42 recently, and it's like suddenly I'm having trouble with technology. It's like, what? It's just like boomers and stuff. Oh, whoops, sorry, YouTube people. It's like the boomers and stuff. Like some of these guys, like my dad, early adopter, been using computers since the 80s, and then suddenly, now that he's like older, he doesn't know how to use computers. I don't know. I don't get it. Okay. So, what's going on right now, by the way, if it's confusing and weird, is I'm simulcasting YouTube and Facebook, trying to get you Facebook people really to go fail over to YouTube, because I can see your comments and stuff easier, and it's easier to subscribe to the channel. All right, so Prana Self says to us, he says, that's why the youth are the future. Remember that song? You're reminding me of that song by Whitney Houston about the children are our future. That was a good song. I in second grade, when I was in Utah, I had to memorize, or at least sing off of a script or whatever, of that song, and that's sort of weird. So let's see what he says. Sorry, I missed the rest of the comment. So he says to us, he says, "Peace, my brother. Keep doing what you're doing. I agree with you. Yet the old will die and young will live, will forever be." Well, I mean, they're gonna die too, right? He says, "You're getting older now, my brother, and so am I. This is one of the ways we take part and fulfill our role. I think the innovation from the young will be the best part of all. So this best part of all of this so-called pandemics. Peace." What's your YouTube channel? The Prana, the link is in the chat stream right up there at the top, and also in the description for Facebook. And I really appreciate your comment, by the way, because that is true. And like I said, I really, I don't know, what was I going to say? I really take issue with this notion that, or I feel like the, what's it called? The youth have been forsaken by the older generation, and it's a little worrisome, you know. So, especially when I agree with Prana that the children are the future, etc. So. Okay, so let's see what else we got. So nobody's having issues. I don't know. I've been adjusting the camera on YouTube. By the way, I don't know. Maybe things are better a different way. I'm gonna have to try things out, possibly a different route in the future. But what else were we talking about? Anyway, sorry again for technological issues. Luckily, it seems like everyone else is doing fine, except for my feed. So, Allie, what is up? Thank you for tuning in. You like the the Audrey Hepburn here? Oh, whoops. Oh man, I gotta stop blocking my YouTube camera. All right, so yeah, there's an Audrey Hepburn. What was I gonna say? Yeah, so the pandemic, lots of stuff. Now we do have some folks. I'm not gonna name who or any, but I've just seen some folks popping in and out that are working, that are familiar with the financial markets and stuff like that. So they either work in the financial market or financial services industries, or they have in the past. And I'm sure there's all sorts of buzz going on about that. And by the way, excuse me, take a sip here. By the way, Facebook folks, if you notice on the chat stream and in the description, there is a link for the YouTube channel. If you want to go ahead and go over there, your chat inputs are showing up a little quicker there. At least I think. Maybe they're not. I don't know. But I just know that you can't hear Seprock beats because you're just on a... maybe I could find a way to play some Seprock beats. No, I can't. No. And you're missing out on some other stuff too. I think the microphone quality is better on YouTube as well. I don't know. There's a few other things. Anyway, go to the YouTube channel, like, subscribe, because then you can know when I am broadcasting live. I guess you also know on Facebook, but the stream's just not really made for that. All right, so the million straws underneath the last big straw. And the other thing that we have to reckon with, again, like I said, is this this idea of whether or not this pandemic is something like an agent of culling for the society. Should that be something that's real? That should be probably a question that we ask ourselves. Um, I think that there's a lot of different rhetoric that's floating around. We've got some folks talking about how it's fake, and now there's actually a lawsuit potential. Pardon me. And I don't doubt there's going to be a class action lawsuit potential against some of the folks that said it was a hoax early on, because that would have caused people to let their guard down and possibly put themselves at risk at their um, suggestion, basically. So, some possibly big, what's it called? Ramifications, I guess, for saying stuff like that. I don't know for sure. I mean, we live in such a weird time that it's hard to say. It's really just hard to say what's going to happen at the end of the day. But I don't know. We've it's just so many weird things. So on one hand, like I said, we have some people that say it's a fake, but then on the other hand, you know, we're talking about China and their deception and some things like that. So and then now the reality's become too real, and pretty much most people aren't calling it fake, and it's almost like we as a society, not we, I guess some segments of our, well, I don't know. It's hard to say. There's a situation where trust is so low in general, especially with experts and with officials, etc., that it's almost like something has to um, What's up, Prana? You came on to the YouTube channel. Yes, I wonder if it almost makes me feel like I think that YouTube is running smoother for some today. I mean, Facebook is running smoother. So, I don't know. Either way, normally YouTube's the one that's causing me problems. Now, on this computer, for whatever reason, this one's I don't know. All right, so thank you, Prana, by the way. Thank you for giving me that feedback. It does look pretty clear on Facebook. I don't know what the... I need some technological help. So if you are a fan of the Boyd and you want to help out, and maybe you don't have any money, but you got some technical expertise, come on down and help a brother out, because this is not working out as well as it's supposed to. Okay. So, what do we got going on? So, Mr. Haas says the pandemic brings up the argument of wealth versus health, or maybe I'm not supposed to reveal anybody's identity. So, anyway, next time I won't. The pandemic brings up the argument of wealth versus health. Yes, indeed. It's definitely a class. It's definitely a class issue. We're I think more and more people are becoming aware of the class issue that's at hand, and they're also seeing the pitfalls of having a for-profit healthcare system. I mean, there's just certain things that you're not supposed to, you shouldn't have sort of dedicated to a profit motive, like the military shouldn't be based around a profit motive. We shouldn't go out plundering people and have that be like the modus operandi of the military. Now, some people might say that what was that? Dang it! I just sorry, I lost my train of thought. I did see a new comment come in, and it just made me lose my train of thought. Allie says 24-hour news channels, all of them are the problem with society right now. Man, here we go. My YouTube acting weird again. All right, so yeah, 24-hour news channels. One of the problems, yes, is we have this weird dialectic, right? This dichotomy, these two opposing forces. On one hand, we have the First Amendment, right? And it's very important to us because the First Amendment right gives us the chance to create an informed public by informing them, right? So hopefully you have the press and journalists or whoever that are doing what they can to inform the public, so that we can have an informed electorate, right? In theory. But what is the purpose of the news channels? Are the news channels supposed to tell you the truth? You know, something that I believe anyway is the fact that the truth is a very prized commodity. I mean, how many people that you know and love won't actually tell you the truth, possibly, or you've known to not tell you the truth? Um, that's something where, you know, how can we just expect this entity that we don't know to tell us the truth? You know that, and they don't. You know, so what's their mode of operation, right? Well, they're supposed to make money, and so the way they make money is by becoming more of whatever flavor they are, right? So if they're right-wing flavor, oh, whoops, sorry, Facebook people. If they're right-wing flavor, then they get their right-wing people more entrenched, right? And Allie says ratings, absolutely. So it's ratings, that's what it is. And the thing is, like, Coke and Pepsi exist at the same time, right? And Coke vies for its customers and would love converts, right? But it keeps trying to entrench customers with its logo and branding and trying to be very consistent, right? And all of these things, so that the people who are familiar stay familiar, and through constant exposure, people that aren't familiar maybe become familiar, right? And and Pepsi does the same thing, and Fox and MSNBC and CNN are doing the same thing. So they're not trying to inform you, or they don't have any noble purpose. Their purpose is to generate revenue for their shareholders, which means, and that's generally in the form of ratings, right? Because the ratings translate into advertising potential, right? It tells a story. How many people are watching me, right? And so if a lot of people are watching you, then you can sell a lot of ad time. And the more ad time you can sell, or at least the more expensive. And here's the other thing you got to remember is that there's only so much time. Everybody's playing on the same day, 24 hours, right? It's the same. If anything, that's the only equalizer, right? Is time. So we're all playing at the same linear time. So there's only so much ad space. So if you have the highest ratings, then now more and more people are competing for your ad space, etc. So it just becomes this vicious cycle where really it's sensationalism instead of news, and the news becomes boring. And sometimes people don't want the news, or the real news, so they don't watch. They want it's like sometimes people don't want to eat the healthy food they could cook at home, but they instead want to go out and eat expensive food that's extra fattening, but extra flavorful to some degree, but it's like they're it's sort of this feedback loop, sort of weird. I don't know how to describe it. I heard a contributor, I think his name Touré from MSNBC, talk about it like this. He was claiming that nobody from up top directed the subject matter that they covered, but instead ratings were what dictated it. So if they were losing ratings talking about the environment, then they would stop talking about the environment. And so it's just one of those things. So people might find it depressing to talk about the environment, and they don't want to hear about it, so they don't tune in, even though they need to tune in. Or maybe they don't want to hear about, I don't know, on a certain channel, they don't want to hear about the updates on what some Republicans are doing or whatever happened in Congress or something, right? And in that channel, whatever the viewers in general aren't really wanting to watch, they stop they stop putting it out there, right? And so, and it's understandable. Like it makes sense if the people aren't watching and the ratings are I don't know if you guys hear that noise. It's just notifying me. I know the folks on Facebook can't tell. You guys aren't connected to the audio. So I don't know, having technical issues. But anyway, so let's see. I've been rambling for a little while. So JMAT's Jug Time Band, I think it was, or something. It's become an echo chamber of news presenters and their views. Yeah, I mean, I think that I think it's become worse than that, than news presenters and their views. I don't know that it's that bad for a news presenter to offer a point of view, but I think what happens is there's obfuscation of the truth in favor of a narrative, which is lying, right? Lying by omission, and that's the problem. There's no impeccability of word, so it's, or at least for the most part. I mean, there's a lot missing. You know what I mean? Things have a narrative, and things people have sort of they're pushing a specific ideology. So for instance, let's say some news came up. All right, so we have let's say, okay, big piece of news. There's a global pandemic sweeping the earth. So there's a way to push one narrative or another to virtue signal in a way, some belief, and that's what's going on. So I think one way to really sum it up is there's a lot of ideological flag waving, this virtue signaling. So for instance, let's say we're talking about global pandemic. On a left-wing channel, we're talking about the global pandemic in terms of a right-wing administration failing at what they're doing. Now, that's true. They are failing at what they're doing. But at the same time, it's not necessarily, well, I mean, that is a focal point, but how much time are you going to dedicate to criticism versus information, right? And we can criticize and point some things out, but there's a lot of extra sort of rehashing in the opinions about things that don't really matter that much. Notice we never talk about someone's opinion about, they never ask about labor and capital relations. They don't ask you about that too much. Or they won't highlight on national news the fact that there is a wealth versus health dichotomy, and in that we are seeing the for-profit healthcare system failing Americans. And with the current administration, some questions about whether or not there are checks and balances and auditing capacities for whether or not they'll actually tell us what's really happening. I don't doubt that we're coming close to something being somewhat similar to China or North Korea, and crafting the narrative that goes out there. If the Trump administration so desired, they may call for these numbers to be lower or whatever. I don't know. I just don't put it past them. I mean, the dude said on national television national television, the President of the United States of America said that he would rather not have a cruise ship that has known coronavirus or potential coronavirus infections board, oh, excuse me, what would it be? Disembark, I guess? No, I don't know, whatever. Unload, or what, how do you, what's the term? I'm blanking out. When you get off the boat or off a ship. Anyway, that he didn't want to let them in because he didn't want the numbers to go up. He didn't want it to affect the numbers because it wasn't his fault. I mean, that's what he said. So if he's willing to keep a cruise ship from porting or docking and letting people off, even to go be quarantined, he didn't want to do that because it would affect his numbers. So if he would do something so sort of brazen and in the open, do you think that he has the potential to do something clandestine, like have his administration change the number of deaths and the number of reports, and I mean, you name it? Is it possible? I don't know, right? All right, so let's see what's going on. Yeah, so it is an echo chamber, just like Coke fans become super Coke fans and they're not Pepsi fans, and Pepsi fans, like, the more they get into Pepsi, they start like actually hating Coke and then becoming disgusted by Coke and then yelling at other people and guilt tripping them like, oh my God, you drink Coke? That's disgusting. So it's like they can go further and further, and next thing you know, they're wearing Pepsi attire. I mean, that's sort of taking it to the deep end. But then again, we see people at the deep end. So, I mean, it's probably not that far off. All right, so what else is going on? Prana says, the media, LOL. The media definitely, I mean, the media is this sort of nebulous term. It sort of captures a lot of things. So, I mean, how do you really define, quote unquote, the media? I mean, that can be anything from the Intercept all the way to the Blaze, and they're vastly different. So, I don't know. Prana self, capitalism, LOL. Yeah, definitely. Capitalism is definitely a major issue that we're facing. Now, when I talk about capitalism, this is something that we have to think about culturally and traditionally because of propaganda from the Cold War and even before the Cold War. But McCarthyite propaganda and then War propaganda. And even in the time of Eugene V. Debs, or Eugene V. Debs? Yeah, Eugene Debs, socialist, ran for president from prison, no doubt. They were imprisoning people who were public socialists or communists back then. So that should illustrate to you how long socialists and communists have been persecuted in this country. Martin Luther King, if we notice, the more vocal he became publicly about the failures of capitalism, well, let me put it. Let's work backwards. Let me take that back. He starts talking more openly about capitalism in a critical manner, and then next thing you know, he's not talking about it anymore. Same with Malcolm X, right? So it was very dangerous to talk about communism or socialism. Now, one thing to think about when you think about communism and socialism, and most of us, let's see, of the 3 people that are watching on YouTube right now, and I can't even tell who's watching. Is anyone even watching on Facebook? If you are watching on Facebook, let yourself be known, right? Dang it. I keep losing I think I've been it's been a crazy day today. I'll just tell you people. Crazy day. So I think my brain is like a sieve. I keep losing my place in what I'm saying. But anyway, okay, so we're working through some propaganda, working through some common misconceptions. So if you've read Marx, Communist Manifesto, or even Capital, I mean, Capital is a multi-volume, huge thing. It's a very good critique on the capitalist system. However, it's very dense and long. But communism, per Marxist communism, is a stateless, classless society. So if you're thinking about communism like with Russia and China and those things, per the propaganda that we've seen from McCarthy all the way through Reagan until now, through Ben Shapiro, through Fox News, through The Blaze, through all of these people, um, or even people like Milton Friedman, he passed away a while back, but he published a bunch of books. Thomas Sowell, those folks, they're espousing this sort of capitalist notion. They're sycophants of capitalism, and they ignore the critical aspects of the of Marx and Engels, and they sort of, a lot of times what happens is they focus on this minutia, and then they try to, not even minutia, they focus on something that probably Marx didn't have to necessarily focus on a whole lot, which was the labor theory of value. I don't want to get into that right now, but basically it's in a way a justification as to why things are worth something. And what he was saying is because a craftsman or some human put their hand upon this thing, even if you designed the machine that created or did something, you are taking human labor and you're transforming that into a value, or you're taking a raw commodity like cotton and you're turning it through human labor and or human interaction, you're turning it into a shirt, right? So you're from a raw commodity to now something that has a value form, right? An exchange form that you can exchange this for cash or barter or something, or something like that. That he focused on that because there was a point where the capitalists were arguing that they should be lauded so much for providing the masses a means to subsist. And he was saying, not really, that the value of anything is really formed from the labor. So the mere capital to create the mechanisms to function as an organization aren't what create the value. The labor is what creates the value in the workers. And that's, I think we can illustrate to some degree pretty quickly that without that without the labor of the worker, that the capitalist, with all their machinery and all of the stuff that they've done, and I saw Ben Shapiro supposedly own some liberal college student that was saying, hey, if you got your pencil factory, what would you do as the capitalist, the singular capitalist, or the few shareholders that are buying this thing? You front the cash, but you got all this material. You got the graphite, you got the wood, you got the machinery, but who's going to do anything? You guys going to man that stuff? And of course not. And then Ben Shapiro, in his callous and snide and snarky way, says, well, who's going to front the cash, the capital to acquire all the resources and get all the equipment and all of the manufacturing goods, and who's gonna do all of these things and even make a place to even hire you, or even for you to even make a job? I'm like, well, sure, the capitalists can do all those things. However, there is no choice but for someone to go and find a job that will ultimately lead to making someone else money, meaning that they are exploiting the worker to make money, right? And you can't escape that. There's no way to escape that. Now, someone could say, well, what would your alternative be? Well, my alternative would be you give me 40 acres and a mule and let me take my chances out on the land. Now, so to some of us, that sounds psycho. To some of us, that sounds like a dream. So for the dreamers, get the hell out and go live on your acreage. And for everyone else, our wages should go up. And until that happens, right, then Shapiro has no point, right? Because because labor could do just fine, living as humans live on this earth, by working the land and living on the land, right? We are born into a system that's not necessarily genetically coded for us, right? What monetary system exists in nature, right? What you know what what's it called? Ownership rights per se exist in nature, right? Everyone's always fighting for that ownership. There's no such thing as just simply staking a claim, right? So it could be argued that maybe I'm not suited naturally for this system. So you can't say it's a natural system and then say people like Shapiro simply just tell me that, or someone like you, for instance, or I mean, for him to tell you that this is, if you can't make it in the system, if you can't figure it out, then hey, sorry. And my contention is that this is an unnatural man-made system that we can't simply expect people to be they're born into it to simply pick up on it, because you could argue that the natural way of things would be me and my homeboys are gonna creep up on your shit, and if you aren't protecting it, I'm gonna yank it. You know what I mean? And your harem, and your whatever else you got. You know what I mean? So, um, obviously we can't work that way as a society, right? But I'm just saying that there are different ways to organize how we play by rules, right? And now we have this sort of musical chairs that everyone was beating each other up and acting in the quote unquote natural way, I guess, if that's how you want to look at it, right? To where, the, whatever territorial animal you want to choose may fight the other territorial animals that you want to choose. And, I guess you could say that's a natural way of being. But at the same time, we've escaped nature to such a degree that why are we trying to act like suddenly we have to abide by all things natural, right? So you could be like saying, well, now you're being hypocritical. Okay, well, it's not black or white. There's sort of a gray area. On one hand, we have to recognize what is natural within humanity. Now that becomes a question. Some people like to define it as negative, like to define humans as wanting to be selfish as a default. And others, though they're not as highlighted and their views aren't as prevalent, others look at anthropology and look at the development over time of humans and prehumans and see that we are a cooperative species, right? So we are coded to help each other out, really, and then that's a natural tendency. Now let's circle back to what's it called? I Am Fishhead, right? We see this tendency to look towards our leaders and sort of assume that humanity follows in turn our leaders, and a lot of people fall into this temptation to define the nature, quote unquote, the nature of humanity by what they see the worst doing, right? Or like, you might have been a customer of some establishment, and then suddenly something bad happens, and now years of use get defined by the one bad thing that happened. And I think that we have this tendency as people to do that. And we have to really think about what is natural, what is human nature, and how do we want to live in a society. But anyway, Ben Shapiro's point is saying, well, who's going to even hire you? Who's going to come up with all that stuff? Well, the more natural way of living would be to, like, I don't want to work at your stupid pencil factory. I'll just till the fields. I don't care about work. It's not about the work. It's about what am I working for? If I'm spending my life working for pennies at the pencil factory versus I'm waking up at the crack of dawn tilling my fields and I'm done by 1 o'clock and I'm like, I don't know, chilling the rest of the day, going fishing and hunting and whatever else I'm doing for subsistence. Maybe I pick up a trade or something and I mess around with it on the side. Pretty cool, right? Until that option's available, whatever the pencil factory offers me is going to be a depressed wage because of supply and demand. Because those people that would have gone out on the 40 acres never got a chance to go out. So if they don't get a chance to leave, then wages automatically get depressed. And the rule that I always want to remind you of is capitalist pay is inversely proportionate to desperation. What does that mean? The more desperate you are, the less they pay, right? So why we can see that evidenced around the world. Why are shirts made in Bangladesh? Because those people are desperate as shit, right? So you could pay these children, children, pennies to work in dangerous buildings that don't have safety code, and thousands of them die when the top floor collapses on top of the bottom floor, which happened a few years back. So, yeah, that that happened actually in our country too. There's man, there I can't remember the exact name of it, but there was a fire, and I think it was a hat making factory or something like that. There was a fire a long time ago, early 1900s, and the way that the capitalists used to handle things was they would actually pack as many workers as they could into the building and get them, tightly packed in, because the more you can fit in, the more money you stand to make on that same plot of land or that same rent. And so, and then they also to make sure that nobody was shirking their duties, they locked the doors. So at one point there was a fire and the doors were locked and they couldn't get out and a bunch of people died, right? And then eventually there was a strike and then some kind of safety precautions were put in place. But it wasn't until people died, and it wasn't until people went on a strike and then possibly lost their jobs and did all of these things that required massive sacrifice and bravery, right? And of course, I don't know that anyone in this generation, other than very, very, very few people, really understand that. And I don't know if this generation's been, or not this generation, including boomers, um, that they would be defiant enough. I don't know if it's because we've been taught for so long and conditioned for so long, and those folks just weren't conditioned back then. But I just don't have faith that Americans would go on strike in the same manner that they did back in the day. Now, it is encouraging to see some general strikes happening during this coronavirus pandemic, but I mean, they could have just done that without a pandemic happening. But anyway, all right. So we got some input from Prana Self. Thank you, Prana, for jumping on the live chat. All right. So he says that's becoming the new standard in business and will be even more so after this pandemic. Yeah, well, maybe, unless there's full collapse or some leader comes along and unifies people and wipes the gauze, or not gauze, but wipes the sort of veil from over the eyes of our brothers and sisters. It just, I don't know who that great unifier is, but I know that all of us can do our little part by expressing more openly our feelings about reality. And I think a lot of people don't want to do that because there's so many arrogant capitalist sycophants that can look to Sean Hannity or I don't know, Tucker Carlson or something to say the same dumb things over and over again and unchallenged. Because once you challenge them, they get really weird and mad because it's easy to back them in the corner and either reveal them as psychopaths or force them to say the psychopathic end conclusion, or they basically say, "Oh, I don't really know," right? Suddenly now they don't really have a position. So most people don't know how to argue with them in that regard. And that's where, I mean, that's where the show comes in. We talk about that, and hopefully you'll be able to see through live chat or through something I can articulate to where you might be able to see and express to other people what is really happening. Now, I don't have a specific agenda other than to look at the world for what it is in reality and seek the truth at all times. That's just what I'm trying to do. And that's just my goal. Okay, so Prana Self, more emphasis on the frontline workers being most important, and they will use commodity to convince them that they are taken care of better than they could care of for their self. Peace. Yes, add my dude Christopher Hansen on Facebook and build with him. Sometimes he will go all the way there with you. I gotta go, my brother. Peace. All right, well, thank you so much for joining in, Prana Self. Prana is an awesome lyricist, by the way. You might be able to catch him one day, if you're lucky, at the Lyricist Live. Um, that happens every first Wednesday of the month at the Art Walk downtown. If you're in Duval County area, go there. First Wednesday of the month at the Art Walk. Okay, so anyway, we got the big pandemic going on. A lot of stuff coming to a head. Possible 100% financial collapse looming. We've got fiat currencies in the lurch right now. People trying to leave their currencies for hard assets like gold and stuff. And you can't even buy gold now because the gold certificates and exchanges are defaulting. There just isn't physical supply of gold. Crazy, crazy stuff going on. I mean, just I don't know. We have, remember Watiko. Don't forget to look around you and notice Watiko. Remember, Watiko is the cannibalistic mindset, the spirit, excuse me, psycho-spiritual virus that can be caught from one to another. So Trump is blasting out psycho-spiritual virus the way that it seems to be playing out. But I don't know. You guys tell me what you think. Looks like, I don't know if we've got any folks